Welcome to the Epiphany series. Today we have Justin K Prim in the Zoom studio. He's an American writer, author, teacher, and now a gem cutter, but we want to talk to him about his journey with Merlin. He's a Merlin aficionado, and in 2015 he embarked on an incredible 4-month journey and pilgrimage to all the sacred sites around the UK to find more about Merlin. Justin, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me, Peter. I'm super happy to be here and excited to be talking about Merlin, which has definitely been a past and present passion for me.
Oh, well, it's an honor to have you here. First of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you went on this incredible pilgrimage.
Yeah, so it was kind of well, obviously it was a strange journey. I think any journey where you go into the wilderness and do weird things is always going to start out strange. But for me, uh, just to go back a little bit, so you said 2015, that was when I did the journey, but actually the beginning of the whole story really goes back to 2008. I was living at a retreat center in upstate New York, and I got um, initiated into this sort of Merlin esoteric healing lineage. And that kind of put the idea into my mind, like, oh, Merlin, like as a guide, Merlin as a not just a literary figure or a mythical character or a movie, kind of thing, but as a sort of eternal living experience. And so it kind of went from there. I went through various modes of thought and practice over a few years. And then I was living in San Francisco, and this idea just kind of came into my mind. I had sort of had this, I guess, a desire or a hunger, or even, I guess I felt it as like a calling, like I really wanted to go deep into the Merlin story. Because when I started doing this energy thing, this esoteric work, it sort of made me remember like a bunch of funny things from when I was a kid. Like, I totally had forgotten that I used to love like Excalibur, the movie Excalibur and the Sword and the Stone. And like, it was like kind of a small passion of mine, like in my pre-teen years, that I completely had forgotten about when I went to, high school and college and kind of went into the world of rock and roll and just never thought about that stuff again until this retreat center. And, so by the time 2015 came around, I had, really had a fully formed idea of what I wanted to do. I was thinking about the historical aspect of Merlin and kind of like retracing his footsteps in the real places where he was said to have been. And so that's kind of the core of the idea, getting into the root of it through the land. Because of course, the story is quite old, and how can you really touch something that's from the basically the early medieval period? There's nothing really left tangibly, outside of maybe rocks and buildings, some very very few buildings. So that was the idea, touch the spirit through the land.
Yeah. And how did it start from being a dream to being a reality? I mean, what inspired you to come physically to the UK, and how did you plan a journey in search of Merlin? Because he's connected with so many different parts of the UK. I mean, people talk about the forests of Caledonia. The Welsh always have talked about that connection, the poetry that's been written, and of course, the southwest of England, Glastonbury, or Avalon as it was once known.
Yeah, it's definitely, you have to do a lot of weeding out. And even during the trip, I mean, I went to some places that later I sort of mentally weeded out. I was like, okay, I didn't really need to be at that one. But I guess I started by reading everything that I could. There are like quite a few really good books, historically based books. And one of them, you had asked me before in the email for book recommendations, but one that I forgot to mention was this awesome one. This was super helpful, On the Trail of Merlin. It's not very easy to find anymore, but it's kind of like a guidebook, like a physical travel guidebook for the Merlin story. And it has like hundreds of localities, most of which for me, because it's also Arthurian and et cetera. and some of that stuff just wasn't very relevant. So I kind of started there. When I really wanted to look at locations, I started there. Of course, I was looking online. I was looking at a lot of Google Maps and just a bunch of other books to kind of get into um, I guess the historical traditions side of it, because there is like so many sides, right? There's the historical, there's the literary, there's the esoteric, um, and some of those overlap a lot, and some of them don't necessarily seem to overlap too much at all, other than maybe just through the idea. So, yeah, I guess I started by weeding out all the ones that didn't really have anything to do directly with Merlin, and then I did sort of a further culling and like, okay, this one didn't really make sense, or this one's just a name that doesn't really have anything to go on it. But I would say, looking back at it now, what really resonates with me still, and where I would continue to go back, or I do continue to go back, is the Scotland locations. Those ones, I love the Welsh ones, and those ones definitely have the most, I guess, historical connection because the oldest Merlin stories are Welsh, at least Welsh language. But when you actually do the research, to me, and I know there's a million interpretations of this research, but like when you actually go through the research and what the scholars have said, and in the 1900s, to me, it all points to Scotland, and it doesn't point to Cornwall, and it doesn't really point to Wales as much, and it doesn't really point to England at all. I mean, not talking about Arthur at all, just talking about Merlin. And if we could pinpoint a historical Merlin, it seemed to fit better. And when I went there, it felt more there, if you know what I mean. If it still felt like it was part of the cultural conscious of that area in Scotland, whereas I didn't feel that in Wales. It felt like a tourist thing. And in Scotland, it was like there was no tourist thing. It was just in the culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's really fascinating. So, take us back to 2015. That day you got on the plane. I'm presuming you didn't row over from the US.
Yeah. So I was in San Francisco. I put everything into my mom's house. I mean, this was really a big moment for me because I don't know. It wasn't the first time I've done this, but and it's not been the last time either. But it wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to go on vacation for a few months and I'm just going to like get someone to sublet my apartment. I was like, I'm going to sell everything that I don't need. I'm going to put all the essential stuff in my mom's house, which is on the other side of America. I'm going to get everything I need in a backpack. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go. And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I knew that there would be an end to it. And I mean, I had a map, calendar wise, but I didn't know, would I stay? Um, would something happen to me? Would I, live in a cave for the rest of my life? And I was open to all possibilities at that moment. But I looked like a backpacker. I had a backpack. I had all my stuff in there. I had scanned all the books that I thought I was going to need because I brought my iPhone with me so that I could like document everything. I didn't take any professional camera gear, even though I knew I wanted to document the whole thing. I was just like really relying on my iPhone. Like that was going to be my only, because I wanted to be light. And the essence of the trip was, or at least my starting rule was I was going to do the whole thing on foot. Because if you want to really get into the spirit of someone from the medieval period, you have to do it on foot. And about a week into it, I realized that that wasn't really, it was just going to waste a lot of time. I mean, it was definitely getting me into the mood, but like walking on English roads, they don't have shoulders and the cars are driving obviously, so that really just meant like walking in really high grass a lot, and it was really tiring and it was hot. So I kind of realized after about a week of walking, like, oh, I don't really need to walk every moment. It's more important to be in the locality. um, so I did take some buses. I hitchhiked quite a bit, which was awesome. I did walk a lot, but I didn't walk all the way through Wales or anything like that. I just skipped around and walked for the parts that seemed like it was appropriate. But I did camp out every single night, other than a few nights where it rained and I needed to like dry out my stuff, and I would get like a couch surfing host, or occasionally like a B&B just to air out my sleeping bag and stuff. I think maybe 5 nights out of 3 or 4 months, I stayed inside, and then the rest was outside.
That's pretty
So
good
that
going for the United Kingdom, where it does rain quite a lot.
yeah
For anyone who isn't aware of that,
yeah
wow,
and it was great. I mean, it was a great summer for it because it wasn't that wet, and it was really nice out, quite hot actually, and yeah, for all intents and purposes, it really worked. I mean, the quest worked. I mean, I I saw everything, but more than and I documented everything that I wanted to document on on a physical level, but on a more spiritual level, I definitely felt like I had a few peak moments where uh, you know I went into a lot of other spaces. And I would say now, and I've thought a lot about this since, because as we were saying before that we started, after the quest ended, my life completely took a different direction, and that was, let's say, that was like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another chapter, and this new chapter that I'm in isn't very, let's say, spiritually oriented. I'm not in the same kind of routines with meditation and energy work that I was in at that time, and so when I think a lot about what it meant to do that, and what I guess the question I think a lot about is like, what does it mean to do magic? Because that was kind of part of the question, right? Like, what is, because Merlin's associated with magic, and with this relationship with earth and nature, and the spirit world. And so you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to do magic? And now that I don't feel like I'm so immersed in a world of magic, and my worldview is a lot more mundane as opposed to magical now, that I feel like, when you intentionally put yourself in a situation like that, and you intend for magical things to happen, there's almost no chance that they won't. Like, they, not that you're going to make them happen, but you are cultivating the appropriate conditions for them to happen. And like, so many weird things happened during the trip that, uh, I don't know. I don't know. They were perfect, and they were exactly what I set out to do. I didn't have to force it. I didn't have to feel like I was faking it in any way in order to, what I mean? Like, if you do a ritual, or you're trying to do a meditation and get into the zone, and you're trying and not really succeeding sometimes because you're thinking about something else or whatever, it wasn't like that. I told everyone I'm off social media, I'm off text, I'm off phone calls. The phone stays off only in phone, or only in camera mode. Like, I wasn't getting text updates or anything. I was like, this is a ritual. This is a 4 month long ritual that I'm going to do with myself. I'm not talking to my family, not talking to my girlfriend, not talking to anybody. And I pretty much did stick to that. I did kind of put some social media updates as I went, but I wasn't like trying to email and text people. I was really trying to stay present with the land, because otherwise, what's the point? You go through all that work, you do all the research, and you go out there, and then you're just like taking selfies and stuff, and it's like, man, this, you know,
yeah, it takes you out
it's
of the
what it could
moment.
have.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And it takes you out of like the magical thinking, if you will. You're suddenly back in the mundane world where like people are talking about work, and whatever else was going on in 2015, and I was just like completely in medieval England.
yeah,
I was in a completely different reality for a few months, even though I was still talking to people, like local people, but my mind went to a different place, and it was really a satisfying experience to have success in that way.
wow.
So yeah, it was cool.
So let's talk about the magic. I mean, what kind of magic happened for you on this incredible journey? And I think the question that anyone who watches this interview wants to know the answer to is: did you find Merlin? Did Merlin truly exist, or is he the myth? Is he the madman? Is he the master? Is he the wizard? Is he a sorcerer? Is he a magician? Who is Merlin?
Yeah, that's a good question. That was one of the questions I had asked myself as well. And when I was doing the historical side of it, like, because the year before I left, it was all research. It took me 1 year to do the research and the planning. So I was really asking myself that question too: who is Merlin? And of course, anyone who's read any book will know that there's more than one historical Merlin, and there's also, if you look through history, there's more than one interpretation of Merlin. Like there's a lot actually. We can look at the Sword and the Stone Merlin, or the Excalibur Merlin, or you know, the Welsh Legends Merlin, and they're not really the same spirit. I mean, the same interpretation of that motif. And so for me, I wanted to go to the source. I didn't really care about what the French had done in the Renaissance, and I didn't really care too much about what Hollywood had done in the 1900s, even though those were what got me to there. But I was like, the only thing that matters to me is the Welsh poetry, like Geoffrey of Monmouth and before. And Geoffrey of Monmouth, everything is with a grain of salt for me. Like, I use him as a guide, but I don't really believe half the stuff that he says, because when you compare him to the sources, half the stuff that he says is it doesn't make sense. Like it's been altered to make a better story. But so I look for clues in Geoffrey, and he's a great source because he's old, 1200s, that's pretty old. But then when you look at the Welsh stuff, it's older. Like some people are saying maybe, I think 800s, if I remember off the top of my head. Like, probably earlier than that, but the one that was actually recorded and written down in like um, the Black Book of Carmarthen, or, there's like three or four different books where these poems come from, all in Welsh, and all kind of 700s, 800s. So I was really only looking at primary sources, of course, English translations, because I don't read Welsh. But so that's where I focus. So all the French stuff, the Holy Grail, the some of the other stories that have been added on there, I didn't really look at those too much, and I didn't really care too much, because obviously, like, the further you get into modern times, the more embellished and romantic it becomes. And that's fun, but like for that particular quest, and trying to look at the roots and the land, I was like, okay, I just want to look at the primary stuff, the original Welsh stuff. Um, so for me, the ultimate aspect of Merlin, yeah, is the wild Merlin. The mad Merlin who drinks from the spring and he regains his memory. The Merlin who, because of his madness, has also had some sort of peak experience through nature, like an animal. When he comes back from his madness, he was like living in an animal like state, and he understood nature like animals do intuitively, without sort of logic and reason, but with emotion and intuition. And so he understood the seasons, and he understood the stars, and he was able to kind of come back into normality and relate it. So to me, this story is awesome. I mean, I don't think we need to go much further than that to find this magical thing. We don't really have this sort of holy grail, or like necessarily directly magical powers, because that early Merlin, he was a prophet more than anything else. His magic was seeing the future, or just being in harmony with nature. And so when I took it down to that level, to that sort of deepest root, which is what I think is probably the deepest root, I thought, the great thing about this Merlin, this version of Merlin or whatever, it still really resonates, at least with me, but I think with a lot of people. When we look at life in 2020 or in 2015 or whatever, it's like, and I think the more that I've traveled now, this really is true. It doesn't matter what country you're in or where you're at in the world. We are completely like divorced from the natural world, right? We're living in a world of electronics and automobiles and skyscrapers and whatever else. Like we're living in a constructed society, and everybody understands that. Everybody loves camping and everybody loves hiking, because it's an escape. And it's like something that kind of gives us a little bit of refreshment when we can't take the fast-paced modern world anymore. And so when I look at that Merlin and I look at what he says then and what it means to me now, it's completely relevant. It's like, you know, slow down, take take communion in the earth. And when I did that, he doesn't directly say it that way, but that's the way I interpret it. I mean, that was why I did the whole quest, right? I wanted to stop for a moment and just look at real life, nature life, animal life, plant life. Um, and when I went there, just to get to your question of did you actually meet Merlin? When I went there, and when I took that moment and I stopped and I went to the places and I drank from the springs and I slept under the stars and, did everything I needed to do, in the end, I did come away with like a pretty profound, I guess, like epiphany, which was like, and I had a couple peak moments, and they were always on top of hills. One of them was in Glastonbury. One of them was in Scotland, and on the hill in Scotland where all the action kind of takes place then or now or whatever, which was just north of Moffat, which is just north of the English Scottish border, um, and so yeah, Hartfell. That's the name, Hartfell. So Hartfell is like to me the sacred. That's the sacred mountain or the holy mountain of Scotland, in the Merlin story. And so I stayed up there for a few days. I did a fast of only apples and drinking the spring water, and I had just such an epiphany up there. And what I came down the mountain with, like the understanding was like, be a steward of the land, be a caretaker. It wasn't about the thing that shocked me was it had nothing to do with magic. It had nothing to do with healing, or it did have everything to do with healing, but not in the way that I expected. Like I was expecting Harry Potter, and I got something way more shamanic, something way more primal and obvious. It's like everybody knows we should take care of the land. Everybody knows that we should take care of the water. And the feeling that I came away with was almost like activism, like become an activist for the natural world because it's becoming destroyed and because it's sacred and it's important and if we destroy the world, we can't do another sacred quest into nature because you know, it's just like the city has spread into the country and taken over, which I don't think we'll get to that point. It would take too long, but that was a potent feeling for me, and I guess the thing that I didn't know what to do with. I mean, I didn't know what to do with that. Like what do you do with that kind of epiphany? It didn't really fit into my worldview in that moment where I was kind of coming out of one space, which was like trying to hold the space of like being a healer and sort of a therapist for people, and then transitioning into this other space where I was more of an artist, with the gem cutting and all that stuff. So even now, 5 years later, I'm still kind of pondering that, like, like what was I supposed to do with that? Sometimes you don't quite understand, and maybe it's still unfolding for me. I don't really know, but I would say yes, Merlin is real, and he's there for the finding. And I don't think you need to do the quest, but it isn't a bad idea. And yeah, yeah,
I think
I
I
think he has
think
a lot of.
you've I think you've more than answered the question. And as you were saying that, it became very clear to me that the Merlin medicine is exactly what you were experiencing. It doesn't have to be something that takes you somewhere. It's not a destination. It's the moment, right? It's being on top of that hill. It's connecting with the land. It's connecting with nature, and just having that epiphany, that realization, is that's it. That's why we're here, right? We're not here to
Yeah.
answer a mobile phone. We're not here to work 9 till 5. We're not here to set goals and dreams. We're here to live purely in the moment. And for me, that's magic. That is magic because so many people aren't in that space. They're in the past, moaning about the past. They're worrying about the virus, or they're looking to the future, going, "I need to be there. I need to be a millionaire." And actually, the Merlin magic is being present, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I don't know if it's coincidence or has nothing to do with it, but I will say that everything that's happened to me since that year has just been like, you know, like looking at my life after 2015. I mean, there was already a bunch of other stuff happening, but like everything went up from there, like everything from my job to my income to my relationship status to my locality on earth, like everything just went up. And I don't know if that had to do with the quest, but it's not a bad sign for sure.
No, I don't think so.
Uh,
I'm sure it has everything to do with the fact that you discovered yourself. I guess we all have some Merlin inside us, and until you discover that, you don't have the keys to the door to unlock the magic of your destiny, right?
yeah. I will say the other really incredible thing that I haven't spoken about too much, like at all in the public sphere, was like along the way, my goal was to meet all of the authors that have ever written about Merlin that are still around. And that part of the quest was very, very successful as well. And I think the pinnacle moment as far as the literary side of it was like sitting around a dinner table with John and Caitlin Matthews and um, Nikolai Tolstoy in the Matthews residence and just being like, how did this happen? Like how did this is impossible, but we were there, and we were all just, like and they had never met before. Like they knew about each other. They don't live that far away from each other. But I like somehow was like, okay, can we get you guy, I don't know. It was crazy. And that was to me that felt like I really touched in because those guys are like for me like up here. They're the ones that helped put in the steps for me to do what I did. Without their books, I wouldn't have been able to find my way. And obviously before them, there was a generation of people before that were, the Merlin scholars in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. And even going back into like the 1880s, there was scholars doing the same stuff. So like I felt really like it was a moment of like somehow passing the torch, like what not necessarily as a as a writer, because it was kind of like they were like, wow, we need new blood and you're doing the thing. But since I didn't put the book out yet, I don't but I still feel like somehow the energy is moving to a new generation, whether it's through me or just with me and everybody else in our generation. But that felt good, and it felt like we're keeping it all moving, which is important. We don't want it to get stuck in, the 1970s or whatever. We want it to come with everything else, even if it has to come into, Facebook and Zoom and Instagram and whatever else. Who cares? Like, just bring it with us and not leave it behind. So
Yeah.
that felt important.
Well, it is important, and that's what I wanted to ask you. Where do you feel the Merlin lineage is now? I mean, like you say, I was trying to research before this interview, and I couldn't get hold of half the books that you recommended.
Yeah,
They were out of print, or they weren't available on Kindle, or I don't live in the UK, so I couldn't just go to a bookstore. But Merlin is alive. You see that. My daughter knows who he is. My daughter's
yeah,
6. So, I mean, I know there's this risk that the myth, the legend, the mythic character has been watered down slightly by, well, by the generations. Maybe each generation has lost some of the magic, let's say. But he's alive and he's well, and he's still this amazing magician, physician, legend. Um, So how can we make sure that this energy, this incredible figure is retained not just for our generation but beyond that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think maybe the most important thing is just to have the dialogue, something like this, or we did this conference earlier this year that I felt like was also in that spirit of keeping the ideas flowing. Um, but then, it depends on how you want to take it. I mean, of course, Hollywood's keeping it going. It's such an easy thing to just keep reinterpreting. So, we've had different shows and different movies, and there's still more planned. So that's cool. But then also, maybe one of the weirdest and most interesting parts of the Merlin story is like the sort of esoteric energy worker side of it, which is just something that's been since the 90s, like, there's like all these different sort of energy healing modalities that have come out of this idea of Merlin. You have like the Vortex Energy group, the Magical Awakening group, the I forget what it's called now. Like, I think that's just the Merlin Energy group, in Wales. And so there's like at least three different lineages or whatever, like modalities that I know of, where you could tap into like a pre-existing community of people that are regularly talking about this in a really esoteric sort of energy worker way, which I don't know, for some people is not that interesting, and for some people it's terribly exciting. I know when I was living at that retreat center, when all this stuff first got implanted into my head, there was quite a bit of Merlin talk, because there were some vortex healing people that lived there, and the teacher that does magical awakening works there. Like, he lives there. So like that was my entryway into it, was through magical awakening and getting initiated into that lineage, and then eventually becoming a teacher of it. So I was really thinking a lot about that, but in some way that almost has, when I look at that way or whatever, that expression of the Merlin story or the Merlin experience, and then I look at like the Welsh poetry, it's almost like I'm not sure how connected they are physically, or whatever, metaphysically. Um, because when you look at the oldest stories of Merlin, there's not really a framework for healing necessarily. Like, there is some moments where they do get healing, mental healing, from drinking from a sacred spring. Um, so there is, I guess, the foundation for the idea of healing in the Merlin stories, but there's never a moment where Merlin is using his own power, so to speak, to heal. It's always through the earth, whether it's, yeah, usually through water. So, um, but I don't know. Obviously, I've had a lot of profound experiences with the magical awakening experience. With the community, and also through the vortex people that I know as well. Um, because I knew a fair bit of vortex healing people when I lived in California, and we would do workshops together. Not as a vortex thing or as a magical awakening thing, but just as a Merlin. Like on the full moon every month, we would get together with a small group, and we would play around. We would look at, almost like Merlin. How did we do it? We would do a meditation. We would have like Merlin tarot cards. We would have an altar, like a Merlin altar with Lady of the Lake, try to balance the masculine and the feminine. We would do some magical awakening energy work. We would do some vortex energy work, and just do like 2 hours with people, me and one other teacher who was a vortex practitioner, and just try to just give people an experience, take, like, do a very mini version of my 3 month um, journey. Can we do a 3 month journey in 2 hours? Can we have a sacred experience around this iconography?
Yeah,
And I would say that works too. I mean, that for me, that was one of the most fun things that we ever did, because it was communal. The obviously the quest was profound and sacred, but it was a personal thing, and it wasn't something that I could really share directly with other people, because it was something happening for me in my small universe. But when we take it into something more communal, like a 2 hour ritual that you could do every full moon or whatever, like, it becomes like a group thing, and you can see how does it affect other people, and how does what's the space like in between you and me, like because it's something's happening for me, something's happening for you, but and that's important, but like it's sort of more important that we figure out what's between us, what brings us together, because maybe what you see is not what I see, but we like something here that we're coming we keep doing this for a reason,
Yeah.
speaking about the monthly thing, but and I the cool thing with 2020 and COVID is like, and I haven't looked into this at all, but like I'm sure someone else is doing this. Like you could have a group ritual over Zoom. You know what I mean? Like you and me right now are doing this thing,
Yeah.
but imagine if there was 10 other people here and we're all coming in with a sacred intention. I haven't even thought about that before. I've only been using Zoom in a very profane and mundane way, but but the possibility is cool, because then actually, because the Merlin community is so spread out and so isolated in all these different areas, whether it's in the UK or America or the handful of other places that it is, um, kind of powerful to do that.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Absolutely. And
I know that.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, no,
I'm talking.
I was just hearing what you were saying about the healing, and I think it is the shamanic side, isn't it? Is this not a lesson for us all that nature is the ultimate healer? Even possibly even bigger than Merlin. This is Pachamama. This is the earth, the spirit of the earth, and Merlin was one of the representatives, one of the figures who came to Earth, and started this story and reminded us that this is what we need to do. And the last
Yeah,
100 years we've abused the earth. We've been on this kind of on the rampage, really rebelling against everything that we came here for originally.
yeah,
And yes, it might be the natural evolution, but perhaps Merlin's coming back, and his story is always there, reminding us that
yeah. I think
water
it's
is
true.
sacred, the land is sacred,
Yeah,
that
I think
the
it's
earth is
true.
sacred. Yeah,
One thing I really like about the Merlin story is that it's very obvious that Merlin was some sort of scientist. Like when you read that early Welsh stuff, and especially like in the way that it's expressed in Geoffrey of Monmouth, Vita Merlini, he when he actually does regain his sanity, he like pretty much starts like a mystery school. He has this glass house that's in the middle of the woods, and he brings, his sister joins, and this other poet joins, and this other guy who basically was also sort of battle scarred joins, and he's like, basically teaching the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of the stars, the mysteries of the seasons and the planets and the elements and all this stuff. And it's very like proto scientific, like if it would have been 700 years later, he would have been like a renaissance man, but
yeah,
he was a little bit earlier than that. But when you look at later people, like, and especially if you're following the the magical currents, go 700 years later, and you've got John Dee in England, and he was like the magician of England who really was feeling a kinship with Merlin, and who, he really thought he was the Merlin of his time, and it's kind of seemed like he was, and he was really very much a scientist and an alchemist and an experimenter, and I like that Merlin, going back into an earlier and more sort of archaic time, he was also looking at nature with a scientist's eye, or like a quizzical eye, or an inquisitory eye. And so I like that well, at least in this interpretation, we won't get, I don't know, we won't get so locked into a sort of a new age idea that we should shun the world, or even the new world. I don't feel like the Merlin energy is the energy that says like, go live in a cave. That was like my fantasy before I left. I was thinking I'll go live in a cave. Maybe that's how it's all going to end. I'm going to see the mysteries of the universe, and I'm going to see through it all, and I'm going to live in a cave. And even though I still have that fantasy, I don't know, maybe a lot of us have that. escapist fantasy. But like that's actually almost in opposition to what I discovered, and I guess that's why it was surprising to me. It was kind of like embrace whatever tools you have, you know, whatever is there for you, and that might mean social media or video gear or, you know, GPS satellites to track our journey or whatever, you know what I mean, whatever communication tools we have. um, it, who cares? Like it's not about that. It's about doing something, you know, doing something good. Whether you do become that spiritual eco activist where you're crusading for, you know, the sanctity of nature, or, you know, for me, I didn't take it that way. Actually, it didn't appeal to my other side, my more logical side, but I did see how it could overlap into the idea of being an artist and working with your hands, and trying to, you know, be whole, to be able to express something. um, and so for me, that is really how I've run with that energy. You know, I've continued to work with my hands and try to get deeper into a more primitive way of working, you know, a more simple way, to try and be as pure as possible, but not fearing social media, not fearing the internet, not fearing technology, because, you know, like a lot of people that I interacted with in that metaphysical community, they were, and especially in the retreat center. I mean, the retreat center literally was a bubble outside of time. At least when I lived there, it's changed now. But like, there was no internet there. There was no cell phone signal, so that you couldn't even be part of the world if you wanted to, and it was like a dream. But I also saw how some people got stuck that like that. You know, it's an escapist fantasy as well, and you're not being responsible. I mean, this is my own interpretation, and don't get me wrong. Maybe for some people that is the best way because of whatever they need for healing, for wholeness. But I didn't need that, and so when the message that came to me when I was on top of that mountain wasn't like go live in a cave. It was like embrace your gifts, embrace yourself, embrace nature, and try to live in harmony with it, even though it's not possible today with all of the baggage that has to come with our society. But like, don't forget it either. You know, like what you said, remind us. Merlin's spirit is reminding us that there is nature, you know, and you should take breaks, and you should incorporate that into whatever part of your day it is, whether it means, like, you know, you've got your Palo Santo stick that you smell just to remember that everything doesn't smell like electricity, or you know, you have a moment in your day where you light your sage or you light your incense, and you take a breath and remember, okay, like I'm part of the universe, and so is Zoom, you know, or whatever, so
Yeah,
is computers.
yeah,
So I don't know, you know, it's complicated, but yeah.
yeah. Be in the world, but not of it. You know, um, that
Yeah,
kind of. But it would be a waste to deny all these amazing technologies that we have available to us. In the same way that the technology back then was looking at a tree or being with nature. But
yeah,
both can bring joy to our lives and bring us that connection with the earth.
yeah.
Wow, thank you.
One thing that the quest sort of made me realize was that it took a lot longer to do things then. You know, just that first couple of weeks of walking so much, and then, you know, when I did try to walk, it's like, wow, it really takes forever to go, you know, 60 miles. This is like a couple of days
Yeah,
walking around, you know. I mean, really, it's like a week of walking, maybe, or maybe at least 3 days.
yeah,
So, and the same thing with everything else, you know, like if you want to start a campaign to save a sacred spring, and you want to do it without any electronic technology, you're basically going to be out there with like a sandwich board and like a cardboard megaphone, just being like, you know, save the earth. Whereas, you know, if you want to do like a Kickstarter to raise funds so that you can like do something a little bit bigger, and get like thousands of people behind it, or at least like a whole community of people, um, it's going to be way easier to embrace what we have, which is, you know, like social media, and Zoom and emails, at least emails. Um, but yeah, now I'm in Thailand, so it's like if I want to do anything with people in the UK or in America, like of course it's online. There's
Mm,
no other way to do it. It's too far. Even just trying to make a call back to California, it's like it's really hard, even with technology. It's just like the time zone and everything. So um, yeah, but obviously you can get lost in it too.
yeah.
And for me, I went directly into the quest from San Francisco, which is like the ultimate opposite, like the place where people get lost the most in technology and apps and Silicon Valley and everything. It's like I don't know, I can't even say how extremely shocking those two places are. There are like literally the opposite places you could be. Um, but the people in San Francisco, for example, or any major metropolitan area, those are the ones that need it the most. Those are the ones living almost on the edge of sanity, on the edge of pushing what the body can take, what the mind can take. How much can you multitask? When you've got like an Apple Watch and a phone and a computer that's zinging at you, and you're just like, you know,
Yes. I hear you.
so.
I hear you. I'll never forget my kind of more spiritual journey began after I went and spent 5 days trekking across the Arctic. And I had no
Mm,
idea this was going to happen, or this was going to trigger this questioning of who I am, why am I here? But 5 days without any phone, without any technology. I know you did like 4 months, but even 5 days in a space away from everything, away from people. It's incredible how it kind of, they call it a vision quest, don't they? The Native Americans. And I didn't even know what a vision quest was, but that's what I went on without realizing. And it was almost that communion between the heart and nature, the heart, the earth, and you and your true self. And I didn't even know I needed to find my true self. But
yeah,
I think in this day and age, perhaps not now when some of us are still in lockdown or going back into lockdown, but I do believe that this is the greatest healer of all. And perhaps Merlin, through this conversation and through everything that he represents, is trying to remind us of this. And for me, I got incredibly emotional. 5 days without speaking to my mum, without speaking to my girlfriend at the time. It was huge, absolutely
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
And the other thing you notice, you see it in autumn as well, even just in wherever you are, but just that you see a wild animal, or you see just the wilderness, the colors, nature almost talks to you, and it can be that connection can really remind you, help you remember like what you're doing here, or how incredible and what a miracle it is that we live on this planet.
yeah. No, it's true. And then it's weird that we have to go to such an extreme just to remember to look at the stars or whatever we have to remember. So yeah, I feel you. I mean, I had pretty much the same kind of experience as well, and just I probably need to do it again now. It's been 5 years. I would love to go back and just maybe just do a week this time. Don't need to do 3 months, but just go out, find a place that you love. It doesn't have to be a holy mountain, but if it is, all the better. And you know, just go camping. I mean, this is why I think it's obvious. Like this is why people go camping. Unfortunately, here, like in Thailand, it's not that great to go camping because it's so hot and humid all the time. But I really romanticize a lot, and I think a lot about Scotland and wanting to go back. And yeah, I'm good. I'm pretty much going to go as soon as COVID is over. Um, but also, there's a Merlin conference in April. If it doesn't get postponed again, it's been postponed twice now. But I'll try to go to this Merlin conference in April, which has a bunch of scholars and interesting people talking, and then spend a week up there and just basically try to go camping and drink that sacred water again, and
Hmm.
who knows what epiphanies will come 5 years later. That's kind of the interesting thing, is just to keep, you know, like every probably every ancient society had its ritual, right? Its yearly ritual, or its whatever regular ritual. Then and it wasn't about just doing something once. It was about the repetition. And so for me, I've gone back twice. I did the first one in 2015, and I went back in 2016 to see some stuff I missed, and I haven't been back since then. So now it's been 4 years since I've been in Scotland, and I'm just like, man, how will I feel? Like everything about my life's changed. My brain's changed,
Yeah.
and my status quo has changed a lot. So how will I feel now? With like some retrospection and and some, yeah, I don't know. Now that I've thought about it for 4 years, and yeah, who knows? I'm curious. So
Well, I imagine when the book does come out that you'll have to go and launch it and spend some
yeah,
time in the UK, and maybe that will help revitalize the thirst and the hunger for Merlin and all he represents.
yeah, I hope. Well, who knows? Maybe it's working that way, or maybe it's working the other way around. Maybe the Merlin energy push. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's like in cycles. Because I feel like I'll go like even from going back to 2008, I wasn't completely immersed in this Merlin every day of every year, but there was always one point in the year where it was just like bam, like, oh man, I didn't think about that for months, and now I'm just like, I need to do like I need to do something, like I need to do a meditation, or get with people and do a group session, or eventually go on this crazy quest. But yeah, or this year I guess it was like put together this conference. I was feeling called when the COVID started. I felt it coming in my mind again. I hadn't thought about it in a couple of years, and then I don't know why, just it was in my mind heavily for a couple of weeks, and then I was just started emailing people, like people that the authors that I had met on the quest, like, do you guys want to do a webinar? Do you want to do a conference over webinars? It's like you know and I feel like that was late February, so it was still the beginning of COVID, and it was really the beginning of Zoom culture as it has become now. And if that's not the perfect expression of the Merlin energy inspiring you to take advantage of the most potent tool that you have at that moment, which was Zoom in that time. And I was able to pull together these people that some hadn't met, or they only knew about each other through their books but never talked. And then suddenly it's like we're doing a sort of panel discussion with all these people, but we're in all different places. I mean, one was in Switzerland, two were in the UK, I was in Bangkok, and it was just like, and then all the guests, like there was 100 guests with us, just who knows, all over the world. And it was just like, this is potent, and
Yeah.
people had such good comments, because they were like, we've been waiting for something like this, like we've been not on Zoom, but like we've been waiting. When was the last time a Merlin's conference happened? I'm pretty sure it was 1989. So that was it was a one day thing, but it was just like, okay, keep it moving, keep it
Yeah.
moving, like. And Merlin was that that wasn't me at that time. That was suddenly something bubbled up, and maybe I was the easiest way to get it done, because I already knew everybody and I was already doing a bunch of Zoom stuff, and it was just like, just put it on, just do it. Just
Yeah.
if everyone will just say yes, and they all did it for free. No one got paid. It was just like, will you volunteer your time? Can we have this conversation with whoever wants to have it? And it was awesome. So I hope when COVID is over or whatever, we can do that again in Scotland with all the other people that are already supposed to be there. And since 2019, or since 2015, one really cool thing has happened, which has been, they've they've made a sort of recognized, like, Merlin trail. So like the whole Scottish portion that I did, which is this nothing to do with me, just coincidence that it. Well, I mean, there are these sites, right? So Robin Crichton has like made this little sort of guidebook and worked with the Scottish government to like make it a sort of more organized thing. So like you were saying, all the books are out of print, but and no one would ever go to Scotland and know that there was a story unless you had really done a lot of research. And now it's like a hiking trail that you can find, brochures for in the local towns. So it is kind of creeping up a little bit more, a little bit more. Still really raw, I think, at least in Scotland. It's not a tourist trap or anything. It's just some hiking spots with now they have some signs, so it's cool. You know where you're at. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's funny, cyclical. It's moving,
Yeah,
but
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think it is Merlin who is kind of lighting the fire, and then the idea comes through someone. You're the vessel for now, and oh, that's great to hear. So, if you could recommend two places that someone who maybe has a week in Scotland and they have some free time, well, where would you tell them to go?
yeah, that's easy. I mean, number one spot is Hartfell. So Hartfell, it's like the ground zero for me. Like it's a holy mountain that's basically, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and there's of course a million interpretations of these stories, but like for me, all the evidence points towards Hartfell is like the place where Merlin was living. Um, the place where he lost his mind, it was a battle, right? He was basically having PTSD. So the battleground is pretty much almost not contested that it was, in this place called what's now called Ardareth, the Battle of Artharet. Um, so that place is only like, I don't know, 15 miles. So you could basically go to the battlefield. You can see the fort. It's like on a farm, but it does still exist as like a Mott and Bailey structure. So you can go to the fort. So yeah, this is what I would do. Go to the fort. So you can do it. You can do it in chronological order. Do the fort. See where he lost his mind. You can imagine him wandering, for however many years north to Hartfell. You There's this place on Hartfell called Hartfell Spa. It's like a Victorian enclosure of a natural spring. So it's kind of like just it's almost like a little an altar or something. I mean, it's sort of got this shape like what you'd imagine is like a stained glass window on an altar or something. And you can go in there. It's like this little brick cave, and you can actually dip a cup or whatever there's a spring there. It's like a little pool. It looks really disgusting, but there's one part of it that's drinkable, and you can dip your thing in there, and it's chalybeate, so it's iron rich. So when you drink it, it has a really funny flavor, but you know it's like you can actually go. If all this research is true, you can go to the place or almost the same place where Merlin drank the spring water and regained his sanity. So I would say, yeah, obviously heartfelt, and then you can go up to the top, and there's a 360 view. It's super beautiful. That was the heart of the Caledonian forest back then. Now the forest has been clear cut for farming and grazing, but like you can go up there and camp and I mean whatever. It's just a hill, so you can do whatever you want up there, and then yeah, that's all you need. I don't. There's other places you can go, but just spend a couple days up there, and you're gonna feel pretty good. You know, the it's like maybe it's walking distance from a small village called Moffat. So if you can get to Moffat, it's like maybe I don't know, 15 miles north of Carlisle. Um, yeah, that's the place. That's ground zero.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for that. I wanted to also just ask you if you got to Shriek in the Necropolis because that's in Glasgow, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
That's
that,
another good one.
yeah,
That's another spot that really ties in very, very well with some of the stories, because there is this sort of side story about Merlin and Mungo or Saint Kentigern, and there's this whole part of the life of Saint Kentigern where he's interacting with, this other character called Lilakin, which is very obviously the same character as the Mirrodin or Merlin character. And so, yeah, yeah, definitely. The necropolis is the cemetery that's overlooking the Glasgow Cathedral. And so in Kentigern's time, the cathedral wasn't there, of course. It was just like a super primitive church that he established that became the Glasgow Cathedral. So if you go up on the hill, another holy mountain, if you will, that was supposedly that was a Druid hill, but I don't really know about that. But you can go up there and you're overlooking the cathedral, and yeah, definitely, I wailed. I sang. I don't know if I screamed at the top of my lungs because other people are up there, but like I sang everywhere I went. I mean, that was part of my journey was through, you know, vocal expression. I sang everywhere. And that was part of the way that I really felt like I was weaving it all together. I was doing energy work in all of the places, and I was singing in all the places, um, with a really strong intention to actually connect them all together. Like if they're not already connected, I think I went to maybe 50 different sites throughout the UK, because I did go down to Cornwall and into Wales and into Scotland. I mean, I did do all of it, but like the idea was like create a web. Like, this was my part of my original idea: create a web through song and through energy work, and intentionally hook them all together. Like a web, like a spider web, and then see what happens. Like see if it becomes more potent. See if you can, I don't know, do something esoteric with it. I'm not really sure if I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe that one's like for the future. Like I don't really care to to find to find out all the things you can do. I know a lot of people really love going into their meditation and going on all these crazy journeys. Some of my friends are really into this. For me, that was never part of my path. I didn't really like doing that kind of full on, hours and hours out of my physical normal reality. Like I like to experience it in real time, like walking, doing energy work and walking, and or sitting in the place, physically sitting in the place. That was always my preferred method, which is why I chose to do some journey like that. But I think for people who really like to journey astrally or whatever shamanically, um, try it. Tell me. I don't know. Tell me if it works. Try and tap into the web and
Yeah, yeah.
see where you go.
Yeah, well,
So
everyone's different. We all connect in different ways, and you get the feeling that this is the way Merlin and the Merlin energy is going to be developed, don't you? That perhaps next time we talk, there'll be some special Merlin meditation or some energy work that you do specifically, and maybe in the places, but maybe physically being there isn't important. I don't know. Depends who you are.
yeah.
Um,
Oh man.
Sorry.
Let me just say, I know this is getting kind of long, but let me just say one
No,
more
no,
thing
no.
about this. I just remembered something, and it feels really potent at this moment. Like, actually, I forget where this happened now, but I think if I look in my notes, I can find this out. So I was doing a lot of energy work while I was there. As I was saying, I'm a practitioner of magical awakening, so there's like all these different tools and stuff that we do inside of there. But whenever I was out there, I got something new, like something that wasn't part of that pre-existing lineage. It wasn't part of any of that stuff. It was like another tool. And I'm not even ever sure if I figured out what it did, but it kind of felt like, speaking about that web, right? Like if you can just imagine all the sites link up like a spider web, and there's something like in the middle, whatever that might be. I mean, I think physically it's probably Glastonbury. Just looking at the map, like what's in the middle of all that stuff, it seems like it's Glastonbury because there's nothing else right in the middle. Like if there was something in the Midlands, then maybe that would be the middle. But I think Glastonbury is the closest. But like if you could just imagine everything's going out from Glastonbury, and I know that there's like also ley lines, right,
Yeah,
going through Glastonbury. So everybody agrees that everything's moving out from Glastonbury. But like in this specific situation of the Merlin sites. If you can just imagine that but they're not going out like a spider web in straight lines. They're going out like a galaxy, like they're spiraling out, right?
I
And
see.
so, like, if you could just draw a line over I mean, if you can draw a spiral over the UK, and like every one of those locations hits the spiral somewhere, somehow that was the tool that I got. Like
Uh-huh.
I, and so when I do that tool, it feels like spirals, like in my heart. But like if my heart is spiraling out, and then you can connect with any one of those things, like rippling pond spirals, and then eventually they just start having interference patterns, and maybe you hit Glastonbury, and then you hit you know um, like Monmouth, where Geoffrey of Monmouth was from, and then you hit uh, any of the places in Wales, and then you hit Oxford, where there's a Merlin's Hill, and then you hit the Lake District, where the Lady of the Lake is supposed to be from, and then you hit the Battle of Artery, and on and on and on.
I
It
see.
just
Yeah.
goes as far as and then you eventually get out into France, and you hit Brittany, and you've got like all that other stuff. I don't know, it's crazy. The Merlin story actually is connected to a whole bunch of other countries too, or that's how they see it. So yeah, maybe that tool.
Yeah.
So maybe anyone who wants to do that can do that. That's a way. If you just feel like if that's your thing to connect through energy work, if you're an energy practitioner, then you can just visualize the spiral in your heart. I'm pretty sure that I can just put that out into the Zoom. I've never shared it with anybody. I've never tried to have anyone else do it, but I'm pretty sure I'm just feeling this right now, that anybody that wants to do that, that's the visualization.
Wow.
Spiral out like a cosmic cosmos radiating from your heart, and see where the visuals, or whatever you get, the feelings take
Yeah.
you, and
Oh,
see.
well, obviously you were meant to share this today, and thank you. I'll share that with my community as well, the Sacred Pause, because I know there's endless fascination with Merlin and his magic. So, and
Yeah,
they do say as well that Glastonbury is one of the chakras of the earth, don't they?
yeah,
In which
yeah,
I'm sure is connected in this mystical web as well.
yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I definitely see that as not it's not connected at all to the Merlin story, but there's this other side of the story, which is the Lady of the Lake and the feminine component of the story. That's the other thing. We didn't speak about it, and I think we have no time now, but that's the other thing I really do like about the Merlin narrative, is like it's not all masculine. It's not all, you know, kind of like bro magic energy. It's like, okay, there is actually a feminine component with the Lady of the Lake, and they do harmonize quite well, and it feels very balanced, which I think is cool. And so, when you want to do the Merlin trip, you got to do the Lady of the Lake trip too. And so then all these other localities pop up, like Glastonbury and the Lake District, and a bunch of other places. Places in Wales like Snowdonia. That was the other place. If got to go there, I went. That was part of my quest with Snowdonia, because there's a spot there, and yeah, that's another. Any watery area, that's like Lady of the Lake territory, and so
Mm,
you have to balance it. Of
yeah,
course, you can't just go all yang. You
yeah.
gotta you gotta you gotta go yin yang. Just
Yeah,
that's part of the spiral.
yeah.
But yeah,
There's an irony here, that I actually am from this area. I don't live there now, but I was born like literally, literally a walkable distance from Carlisle, and you know, the places I went as a kid were the Lake District, Snowdonia, the border of England and Scotland. So, and you've done all this, and you're telling me all about it. What was I doing?
no, you're not the first person to say that. Like sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it maybe takes an outsider to see the special things of your own. Especially if you really did grow up right there. It's so normal. How would you know unless you were really paying attention, and sort of been trained to look? How would you know? Just like I'm sure that there's some sacred thing in my hometown, maybe more like Native American style because that would have been the people that would have been there traditionally. But like I never knew, and I still don't. Like someone
Yeah.
else will have to tell me about the sacred river or whatever in my hometown. But I don't know. Somehow for me, that other thing called, and I had to go
Yeah.
to the UK to figure that out. So,
Yeah, we used to go
uh,
to Camelot festivals and everything, because that's just normal. But it was just what you do when you're a kid, and it never became my life obsession. But I think perhaps now I'm 43, maybe I'm finally remembering, thanks to
yeah,
you and your wonderful blog. I do want to say one thing, and that is, how can people find out more? How I know your book isn't out yet, but is there a website? I know that you've done a great
yeah.
blog. Tell us a little bit where they can find this.
So I made a website as part of my research because I was so overwhelmed with how much information there was. I needed to organize it. And because I have a background as a web designer, I was just thinking like this is the easiest way for me to organize all this information and also kind of make it useful for other people. So that website's called The Heart of Merlin, which is what the book's going to be called, theheartofmerlin.com. And so basically what you'll find there, I've got it broken down into kind of like a brief Merlin story with a bunch of book references and some really nice high res artwork from like Renaissance and basically every kind of interpretation that I could find of Merlin going back as far as there is, as far as there is an illustration. I try to get them all scanned or whatever, and so they're kind of all in there. And then there's a Lady of the Lake page that talks about the Lady of the Lake and her story and some of the books that have been written, and also some medieval and Renaissance imagery. There's a really nice, if you're really into the research, there's a whole page called resources where you've got documentaries, videos, books, magazine articles. There's a whole bunch of PDF links there that I'm hosting. Basically, every research thing I could find, I put it all there. Some of it's maybe questionably copyrighted, but whatever, it's there anyway to find.
Yeah.
And and what else is there? Yeah, there's a whole page dedicated to just my personal journey, the quest, what the book's about, with a bunch of photos and there's a video trailer and stuff like that. So if you want to see some of the places that we've been talking about, over this talk, um, you can find some photos and some videos there. I think that's mostly what's there. Yeah, and then there's sort of the sort of feed, the blog feed on the front, which has the it's a Facebook. It's basically it's reflecting like the Facebook page I made for the Heart of Merlin. But if you scroll through there, you'll find some of the later stuff, like all of the videos from the Merlin conference that we did back in February. You can easily find those there without having to like search YouTube or something. But yeah, all the talks are up on YouTube, and you can find them all through theheartofmerlin.com. So pretty much everything I've ever done with Merlin is all easy to find through that website. And eventually, when the book comes out, that will be the book launch website too. But who knows when? Maybe a year or two still.
Whenever Merlin decides.
Yeah, yeah,
Justin, thank you so much. And one thing you didn't say there was what an incredible blog it is. Like your writing, just from the very first paragraph, I was gripped. And I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you. And the first thing that I thought, I have to tell this guy to get this book out because there's huge interest in Merlin, and I think you're obviously one of the key pieces in the chess game moving forward for Merlin. So thank you for your dedication to Merlin and the mystery and the mystic, the wizardry and the madman as well. We've all got a bit of that inside us.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks for your time and dedication to this interview, and we'll be watching with interest. Please let us know when the book's out as well.
Cool. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really enjoyed having an avenue to talk about this stuff. I don't really get to talk about it too much in my current life, so it's kind of like it's like a happy memory. But when I do get to talk about it, it definitely, I feel the fire again. Like I feel it now. Just what it was like and what, not even about the quest or anything, but just that the energy that sucked me in the beginning, the reason why I got into this stuff in the first place, it's still there. It hasn't at all diminished. It's only just taking the moment to look at it. And so thank you for actually reminding me to look at that side of myself and that side of the world. And yeah, you kind of made me feel like it won't be that hard to get the book out, actually. Like I just need to get a couple of, I just need like a month to sit down and flesh it out. But yeah,
Yeah, we
maybe,
just need that second lockdown to finish it off.
yeah, if only if I could get locked down in Scotland, I think,
I can organise that for you.
yeah, if I fly there before the airline, whatever,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
not going to do that. But
do contact me actually if you do go into that area because it's not far from my home, my original home, and it'd be great to meet
well,
up and
you're in Lausanne, right?
yeah, I'm close to Lausanne now. Yeah, yeah, in a more
My
close to Geneva. Yeah, yeah.
I think more realistically, we meet in Geneva because I go there every year. My wife's family is French, and they live like 10, 15 miles from Geneva. So we always go into the city, looking at, her dad works there. So we can do a dinner one day in Geneva, maybe.
Okay, let's do it. And but we also need to go to that hill together. I think
Oh yeah,
in
definitely. Well,
Scotland and
well,
the
if
holy mountain of Scotland that I didn't know about somehow, even though I lived very close to it.
Well, what you should do definitely is pencil the date of the. Oh yeah, since we're talking about Merlin, we really got to give a shout out to this conference because even though I have nothing to do with it, I've just been um, trying to like let as many people know as possible, and I'm just trying to remember what the website's called so I can tell you. Merlintrail.com. And if you go to merlintrail.com, that's the website that's for the obviously for the Merlin Trail that they just made. But it's the same people are putting on this conference. And I'll just can
Yeah,
I was gonna can I share the screen real quick and I'll show
yeah,
you.
absolutely, go for it.
You got to give me permission though. I think
Over.
it's a little button on the share screen.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
So hold on, it's
It says
telling
like
me.
give permission.
Where do I? How do I give you permission?
Is
Oh,
there a little arrow on the share screen button, like a little up?
there is, but it's only allowing me to do mine.
Oh, okay, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the Merlin Trail or merlintrail.com, right now it's set for, okay, the conference is called Merlin Fact or Fake,
Yeah.
and it's right now scheduled for April 17th and 18th, 2021. So I'm planning to be there because I have to go to the UK at some point anyway for a class. So I'm going to try and make my class the same week so I can, you know, sneak off on the weekend and go see this thing. So I think you should try and yeah, there you go. So scroll down a little bit and you'll see that there's this Merlin fact or fake thing under this picture. So yeah, keep going a little bit. Keep going.
There
It's
we
right
go.
under this paragraph. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So yeah, that button has all the details about all the speakers. It looks to be really, really good. I mean, all the speakers are really either really well known or they sound like they're going to be great speakers. So and they're going to be in. It's in Moffat, so it's literally 5 miles away from that holy mountain. So we can definitely, if you go there, I'll go there, and everybody watching this can go there as well, and we will all go there, and we can go up on the holy mountain together and drink the sacred waters, and that will
Ah,
be our communion for 2021.
fantastic. Well, that gives us something to look forward to after COVID, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you thank you again for everything, and it's going to happen. Everyone who's watching, please come and join us in April between the 17th and the 18th, and we're going to go up the Holy Mountain as well.
Yeah.
Justin, thanks again for your time, and I'll see you somewhere my dreams, I guess, where we're doing magic and some crazy past life thing. But I'll also see you in the physical very, very soon. And thanks for sharing all your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, once again, it was a really inspiring conversation. Really got my blood and my juices boiling again. So
Well, that's probably why it happened. Okay. Well, thank you and goodbye. Take care.
see you
Have a
later.
great day. Cheers. Bye bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.